Yeah, we might just get going. So thank you for the people that have joined in so far, and welcome to our Club Grants webinar. I guess with the amount of people we've got on tonight, we might slightly change the way we're going through this, and Keith will guide us through with his slides, etc. But then we'll have a chance to have probably a number of Q&As at the back end of this, so people can ask some questions, and we can assist, myself or Keith can assist you with anything in terms of some questions that you might have. Keith is the grants guy. He's been around for some time now. He's been helping a lot of football clubs around the traps, not only in New South Wales but across the country, and does a lot of work for other sporting organisations and other organisations, not just sporting as well. So welcome to Keith, and I'll take it over to you, Keith, and off you go.
Thank you, Daniel. Good evening, everyone. Let's talk about getting your grants ready, as I said. And tonight we're going to focus on club grants. I want to look at basically Clubs New South Wales funding, particularly Category 3, but I will cover off on the other categories as well, obviously because they're forthcoming. They'll be starting to open up this month, next month as well. So depending on your LGA, it'll have different opening dates. Make sure you check out the Clubs New South Wales website, and also there'll be further information in your local government authority website as well, as they usually work and partner with the club grants in some way, shape or form as well. Club grants Category 3 is infrastructure funding. There are two other funding rounds in Category 1 and 2, which is more community funding aimed at programs and projects, which may be of your interest as well as a football club, because you want to do something around mental health, you want to do something around female participation, you want to do something about community health and well-being, you want to do something about physical fitness. There's opportunities there. And I'm going to talk through that this evening as well. And then we're going to give you some general tips on writing a grant, do's and don'ts, getting your grants ready, and what's expected of you in putting together an articulate grant application at the end of the day. But the biggest issue, given you're a volunteer-based, predominantly organizations as football clubs, is time and capacity. Time to write the grant and capacity to deliver the grant. And I want you to be understanding of that, because it's going to take time to write a grant. Grants are open for 4 to 6 weeks, but doesn't mean you just start your grants conceptualization once the grant opens. What do I mean by that? You should be thinking about the grant well ahead of time, because you have a grants calendar. You know indicatively when it's coming up and how you can plan accordingly for that. Why is it important to plan? Because you need to get quotes, letters of support, write a business case, put together a community consultation, and show them indicatively that you're serious about what you're doing with a serious application. And I want you to go away with the 3 C's and the 3 R's today. If you remember anything from tonight, the 3 C's and 3 R's. 3 C's are about the writing part of the grant application. A well-written grant application is clear, concise, and compelling. Clear, concise, and compelling, or short, succinct, and to the point. From the process point of view, it's about the 3 R's: research, relationship, reporting. Research, finding what grants are out there that are best fit for your club and your club's eligible to apply for. Relationship, you need a relationship ideally with the funding body. And even Clubs New South Wales will say this, and they mandate that even in their literature, that if you're going to actually work with them in ascertaining funding, even in applying to them, you should have gone in and introduced yourself to the general manager of the club, even potentially have your AGM at the club, have a coffee morning at the club, utilize club facilities, work with them basically, and show you're just as important to the community as they see themselves as well. And then the reporting, the mandatory acquittal, the auditing, the reporting, the evaluation that you need to undertake at the back end when you've received the funding. And everyone seems to forget that, ideally, basically. Oh, grab the money and run, we're good to go until the next funding round. Well, you're not eligible to apply for the next funding round unless you've completed the acquittal and the auditing and the evaluation on the last funding round. In between the 3 R's and the 3 C's, I want you to have a plan. I just want you to have a plan. I want you to be proactive rather than reactive as a football club. I want you to think about having a plan. As much as you have tactics on the pitch, I want tactics off the pitch. So the tactics off the pitch basically is that government expects you to be extrapolating from a master plan, a business plan, a project plan, and taking that content and populating it in your grant application to answer the questions in your grant application. Because a grant application is a glorified sales pitch. So the question you need to ask yourself is, do you know how to sell yourself? And are we selling ourselves in the correct manner? Because a grant application is making a statement and backing it up with fact. Stats and facts, tangible data that can't be argued against. That's what they want to see. So you need to substantiate everything you're saying with evidence-based material and subject matter, okay? So I have a plan, as I said, and that's what I don't see with a lot of football clubs that I work with, basically. Everything's reactive rather than proactive. We'll deal with the trouble when the trouble arrives, when that's too late in the day. Okay, so as much as you're articulate about what you do on the pitch, getting the right coaches, putting the right systems in place, putting your academies in, basically, resourcing your club, I need you to think about the business of your club now off the pitch. Because again, grants is only contributory funding. You're expected to be sourcing revenue from alternate revenue streams. So to use a metaphor, government expects you to make the cake, they'll put the cream on top, but you make the cake. And they expect as well that the running costs, the organizational costs, the operational costs of this grant and what's going to lead to is you embody those and you absorb those. They're not going to pay for those at the end of the day. So there's a lot of considerations to think about whether you should even apply for the grant, even if you are eligible for that grant. What is your likelihood of success? Why waste time and effort on a grant that you're not going to get? So it's very much having a deliberate approach, not going for low-hanging fruit just because the grant's there, we're going to apply for it. It's very much thinking about, right, what's the right grant? And club grants is a really good opportunity for a lot of clubs. And we see a lot of clubs get really good funding. You know, optimally, you're getting anything from 10, maybe up to 60,000, maybe even potentially more out of club grants for certain schemes, programs, and certainly the infrastructure components and club grants category 3. So make sure you do your budget in advance, work with a bookkeeper, work with an accountant, don't be speculative. I don't want to see artificial budget inflation. It costs what it costs. And I want quotes to back that up at the end of the day. I want you to factor in, obviously, things like COVID, factor in budget blowouts, basically, in terms of bad weather, as we've seen recently, supply chain issues as we have with builders, basically trying to get materials, trying to get a builder on site now is even impossible, given the amount of workload they have at the moment. All these considerations, I just want you to be mindful of. In other words, be realistic with your budget. Get the quotes well in advance because they're going to be oversubscribed. Get those letters of support, ideally state or federal MPs. Federal is going to be harder now before we go into government lockdown. But definitely the letters of support are very, very important. All right, Football New South Wales will gladly support one for you as well. But obviously go to Daniel with plenty of time. Don't go to him last minute and ask with a day to go. They need a letter of support. The politicians will expect you to write the letter of support yourself. They'll proofread it and then sign it. So still a bit of work to do as well there at the end of the day. But club grants, over $1 billion in total club grants has been awarded since 1998. Last year alone, they had 9,400 applications, of which basically 2,360 were unique applicants last year, first timers, okay, hadn't been on the scene before. So massive amount of money, massive amount of applications, right? So you're competing against a number of different entities. So to be eligible, must be a not-for-profit organization providing the following project: community welfare, social service, community development, community health services, employment assistance activities. And again, I want football clubs to be mindful of this. It's more category 1 and 2. Category 3, as it says, the infrastructure. And I definitely want you to be, you should be definitely contemplating applying for that, given the infrastructure needs of your clubs. But I want you to think about the other components as well, and partnering with other community groups, NGOs, not-for-profits for some community welfare. As I said, mental health, health and well-being initiatives with multicultural groups, Aboriginal groups and the like as well. They're happy to fund initiatives like that, okay, if you want to go down that road at the end of the day, basically. Okay, so category 2 funding is for the general community development support activities such as junior sport and grassroots sport and better welfare activities. 3 is support projects that assist communities in essential infrastructure. So you're definitely there in 3, right? That's definitely your remit. But I'd look at category 2 when it comes up again as well, basically, and sees there's something there for you, given they've put in sport. Okay. So cross grants, club grants, the statewide closing date is no standard one because it's depending on the area. So whatever a local government authority you're in, please check on the club grants website and check your local government authority to see the actual open date and close date of it. But they have a find your local grant round on their webpage, on the Clubs New South Wales webpage, which you can do a postcode search, and it allows you basically to see what the parameters are of opening and closing dates, basically. Clubs allocate category 2 funding, whilst the clubs set deadlines. Most accept category 2 applications year round if you want to go down that road. And again, reminding you what club grants category 2 is, okay, compared to category 3. So definitely go for category 3. I think sports infrastructure, you know, much needed. You can validate it as well, obviously, but they would expect you to validate it, obviously, with football thresholds, facility usage, a schedule of usage, prospective numbers that are going to come true. Basically, if you build it, they will come. Whether that's floodlights, whether that's an AstroTurf pitch, whether that's a grandstand, whether that's dressing rooms, whatever the case may be. All right. Due in part to different size of club grants and eligible clubs, no standard limit. So again, it's within the remit of what they think. You can apply for amounts, obviously, and they may part pay it, they may part fund it, they may give you the whole amount, basically. They even may come back to you and give you more. But that's obviously based on the relationship you have with the clubs themselves and the club committees at the end of the day. But talk to the local committee and consider, again, the working relationship you need with them. So maybe too late this year, but as a takeaway for future years and club grants, Mike, I acknowledge your hand up. I'll just finish the point and come to you. Is that basically you may want to start instigating that relationship with them now for 2023 funding. Yes, Mike?
Sorry, struggling to find the unmute button. This is the bit that I struggle with. So just to understand, because the whole club land thing confuses me because I'm new to this country relatively. So the funding comes from the club, or is it all going to the clubs put it all into a pot and then it's divvied up, or how does that work?
Yeah, so club grants obviously is their profits and revenues. They're obliged in their legislation to proportion a certain amount of their profits back in for the greater good of the community, their corporate social responsibility to give back to the community. That's allocated then basically per club on the revenue that they've accumulated. Mm-hmm. So basically each club will submit an amount, basically, or it'll be allocated an amount from Clubs New South Wales overall.
Okay, so but who does the allocating?
The club themselves.
The club themselves. Okay.
That's why it's integral to have a relationship with your local club.
And that's the issue I have. So all the clubs,
time to play nicely.
They're all rugby league, and they're all.
I to an extent, I'll agree with you, Mike. Right?
Where I am, I'm talking.
Oh, where you are? Okay.
Yeah.
But they've been more savvy in recent years and have given to other sporting codes.
Yeah.
All right, and I've seen that with hockey and netball and tennis, basketball, basically. So they're happy to look at football clubs and what they're doing, but it's about the relationship. And if you, again, I know about the 3 seasons, 3 hours, but in the middle of that 3 hours, I talk about relationship. If you get anything tonight, it's I need to set up a meeting. That's the takeaway you have tonight. Set up a meeting with the general manager.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. That's what I was after. Thank you.
No worries, Mike. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, clarification? Anything I've said so far? All good? Okay.
All good.
Excellent. So we receive government funding. Can we still apply? Well, you can. Basically, it's important, though, that funding preference is not given to funding or projects that can be readily assisted by existing government funding. They don't want an overlap. Okay. So basically, don't apply for the same thing. Or you're applying for stage 2 of something. So government funds stage 1, Clubs New South Wales fund stage 2. There's no conflict of interest. All right. So again, think about it, basically compartmentalize the ask. Okay. Do club grants have to be for a project? No, they can be for one-off funding to buy an equipment such as a vehicle. They can be extended or one-off staffing costs, including training or wages. They can be in-kind supports, occasional ongoing use of club facilities or meetings or activities. So again, if you want a venue for your meetings, AGMs, club nights, end of year awards, they're more than happy to help you. And obviously then they'll remove the cost in that regard, basically, and the overheads associated with that as well. You could apply for that instead of the money itself. All right. However, it's important that the funding will be assigned to a specific purpose. Generally, non-specific allocations are not appropriate, and applicants need to identify how the funding will be expended at the end of the day. So you need to legitimize your ask and show it's everyone's favorite phrase as a funding body, value for money at the end of the day. Okay. What they expect from your application: to demonstrate a broad community benefit of why the funding is needed. No commercial projects. Can attain funding for social enterprise, that you're reinvesting money back into the community for the greater good of the community. You're just a conduit as a football club doing that. So the expectation is you're not just catering for your members and your supporters, you're catering for the wider community. And that can be hard, I appreciate that, but that's what they want to see. All right. So again, that you're doing a program or project or even infrastructure under category 3, they're going to say, great, build a stand, put in the floodlights, put in the drainage, basically put in the changing rooms, but who else can use the facility? Especially if it's on Crown land or on local government land, obviously. But it's very much, again, that, and by the way, the DA would need to be approved rather than pending as well, basically, for your application for club grants, ideally. So They want to see greater community traction. And this is where we're seeing football clubs partner with other sporting entities, but also other football clubs for tournaments, whether it be pre-season or during the season itself, for training, with schools, for after-school programs and initiatives. Basically shows a greater commitment to usage of the facility. That's what they want to see, okay, within your LGA at the end of the day. And, you know, I take the point, as we said, there has been a focus, or there's a perception about the focus, what Mike said about rugby league, but I think in fairness to them, they have spread their wings and they have funded quite a diverse opportunities that are out there presently in terms of, and including football as well. Given the code has grown and has grown phenomenally in terms of numbers and participation rates, I think they well recognize that within their remit in their areas as well. Clearly defined service delivery in your area. Obviously the money is for you to go back into your area. It's not to be spent anywhere else. Excluded projects that will receive government support, as I touched on the previous slide. They're not going to fund something that's getting funded already by someone else or somewhere else. Prioritize projects submitting more than one. You can apply for multiples. I wouldn't, because I think it looks greedy and it looks like a wish list. And I think you look at one identifiable funding opportunity, and that's what you're selling as an investment opportunity for them. Certificate of incorporation. They want a current public liability insurance. They want a copy of your most recent annual report. They want, I love this terminology they use, proposed strategies lead to strong outcomes. Have a plan, have a strategy of how you're moving forward and a roadmap of how you're going to get there. That's what they want to see in your application. And that's what they want to see in your attachments as well, basically. Substantiation, that going, we don't just have it as an idea. It's not just theoretical, it's practical. We've written it down, we've planned it. This is how we're going to roll it out. This is how we're going to do it as a football club. Data to prove the need, as I said, stats and facts, tangible data that you can source from local government, from Football New South Wales, that are expecting you to be doing your own analytics in terms of usage and members and numbers at the end of the day. The idea for the project to merge from the local community with local benefits, targeting highly disadvantaged groups. So again, if you're a football club from a low social demographic, that would be seen advantageous, obviously, to give you a hand to dig out. Aboriginality and multiculturalism have higher rankings if they're embedded in your application as well. And no other funding avenue available for the project that you can talk to them about. You've tried a lot of other places or applied for other grants and you haven't been successful. So you'd like to support your community by having a local entity such as a club support the community. And blatantly, this is their own words as well. This is on their actual application, a good working relationship with the clubs. So again, if you make the decision this year not to apply, not that I'm saying that's the case or you shouldn't, but if you feel that you're time poor or you just haven't got the right project, the first thing you do is go in and start that relationship for next year. And given that category 2 is open all year round and there's several funding rounds within club grants a lot of time, it's an opportunity now to go out there and actually instigate that relationship with the general manager and look at other ways. I mean, they could put on a fundraising evening for you. They could actually come on as a sponsor. There's many different ways you should go in and talk to them anyway, basically, as a local resource at the end of the day. Anyone, any questions, comments, clarification on that? Talk to me, pick my brain.
Thank you.
No, all good? Okay. So they need to see value for money. And because you can see from the numbers I showed them on the earlier slides, they're oversubscribed in applications, all right? They're inundated. And a lot of the time they get the same applications, the same organizations, which is great for them in one way because it shows solidity of approach. We know if we give them the money, they're going to spend the money in an ethical fashion with great probity and transparency and deliver on time and on budget. But the disadvantage of that is they're giving the same people the same money every year. They want a divergence. And that's what I want to see, new applications and new entities applying, which means namely your football club. So you got to think about your positioning in your own local government area and think about, right, you know, maybe we should stand out from the crowd here and put, maybe not this year because we're not grant ready, maybe we are, but next year, within the next 2 years, we're going to apply for a club grant. What's required from you? You need to be seen to be building capacity within your sports sector, within your community. You need to have a sustainability approach, which means if we give you the money in this grant, what it's going to lead to are the outcomes, or the outputs, what's the greater translatory effect for the football club, for the sporting code of football, for your players, your members, your participation, families, everyone. You're creating a profile for your business. And I use that word deliberately. Yes, you're a football club, but you're also a business, profit and loss. And you got to talk to them as a business as much as you're talking about it as a football club. So the football club's probably the emotive part that you talk to them about. But the emotive part of your application is only about 20 or 30%. The rest of it's 70, 80% about a business case and a business opportunity of investment. Okay. So you need to plan your grant application, given it's going to be opening in a couple of weeks in certain club grants rounds. Proactive, not reactive. Well, you need to have a grants calendar as a football club. Show indicatively, well, this is one of many grants I'm going to be applying for in the calendar year or financial year. We got to do the acquittal, which is the reporting, the evaluation, that I should have a project plan for the program or project that I want to roll out anyway. In the first instance, I should have a business plan or a master plan for the club, like a 3 to 5 year strategy. And I should have my capex and my budget in order, which means I did go back to my bookkeeper or accountant to make sure it's all dot the I's, cross the T's. And the application needs to connect with them, communicate quite clearly what the ask is, and show them how you can deliver on time and on budget, which means you show them equivocals, which means you show them experience. Everyone's always going to ask you in a grant application about runs on the board. What's your experience in doing this, delivering this on time and on budget with this money? Can you spend our money in an ethical fashion, on time and on budget? And give me an example. So showcasing, demonstrating through case studies where you've done similar size projects of similar worth and value previously will always be advantageous. What makes for a successful grant proposal? Well, a program or project's been in scope of the funding area of giving, sufficient documentation supported with facts, a project that reflects people's needs, not organizational needs at the end of the day. They're interested in funding your players, your families, your community. The football club they see as a conduit, a middleman to get them access to do that. That's what they want to see. Okay, so stop talking about yourself as a club and start talking about yourself as a community entity. All right, that's what they want to see at the end of the day. You're just a means to an end to get the funding out there. Why are projects declined? Well, I've just tried to synopsize this down to 2 slides. When you read through these, you'll see these pitfalls are very much common sense. Nothing here that's going to astound you. Nothing here too left of field. It's very much basically, these are the common mistakes that people make again and again and again. So don't make them. All right. Usually because people are time poor, they're doing a last minute application. So just stay away from these. This is the first slide and then the second slide. Second last bullet point's always been a bugbear for applicants, let alone for funding bodies. Insufficient evidence that the program or project can sustain itself beyond the life of the grant. Obviously, the money doesn't last forever, right? It's only there for a certain period of time. They want to see if you're going to build it. You're not going to capitulate it after the end of the funding. The question they're going to ask you is how you're going to sustain it. What financial capability are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? Okay. So running costs, operational costs, etc. Measuring outcomes, they're asking for now your goal statement, your objective statement, your vision statement, or mission statement as a football club. What activities and tasks are necessary to accomplish the objective? Benefits or results of each of those objectives? How do you measure success? The question that comes up now is how do you define success? It's an interesting question in the grant application, isn't it? I did have one football club in the past who went very well, full stop, as the answer to that question. Not what I'm looking for, obviously, something a bit more expansive than that. So I'm very much, you got to quantify and qualify. Make a statement, back it up, facts and stats. Okay. So again, this is very much business writing, business storytelling, sales pitch, marketing, communications, all rolled into one. Okay. And it takes time to do this. I do usually 4 drafts of any grant application I work on, certainly the ones of sizable worth and value, because what I put into it is what I get out of it. And it's very much, again, when I work with my clients, trying to educate them around that. Basically take the haphazard approach. You look like a sloppy application, you look like a sloppy football club, why would I invest into you? Okay, proofread, edit is what you need to understand. I'm not actually asking you to be a good grants writer, I'm actually asking you to be a good grants editor. That's what I'm asking you to do. Cut out the waffle and the wordology. Less is more. Okay, that's what we need to learn about grants writing. Average grant sentence is about 10 to 20 words. I need to open with an impact statement. First 20 words is where it's won or lost. Last 20 words, you tie the shoelaces, you wrap everything up. So just like any good story, you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end to your narrative, all in 500 words or 500 characters, which means you need to structure your answer like you did in high school or university. Okay, and you need to practice that. It's not going to happen overnight when you pull an all-nighter. So as I said, remember the 3 C's in terms of writing a grant application: clear, concise, and compelling, or short, succinct, and to the point. This is a glorified tweet, is what you're writing. So it's very much, again, you only have a certain amount of characters to write, stick to it. Don't go over. They don't allow you go over. They allow you go under to what, 10%. Okay. Again, what they're trying to achieve is what you're trying to achieve. How are you singing off the same hymn sheet as government or as Clubs New South Wales? Which means you read the selection criteria, you read the eligibility, and you include that compatibility in your argument to show indicatively you know what they want to achieve with their money, because it's always their money even when they give it to you, and how you can spend it appropriately for them. That's what you're selling back to them. How do you collaborate with others? That's what they want to see. They don't like silos. They like to see collaboration between football clubs and Football New South Wales and your local association, between your sport and other sports, your sport in schools, your sport in community groups. That's what I want to see. So something to contemplate moving forward as a football club. Steve, do you have a question?
No, I'm okay.
Oh, sorry, I thought you unmuted there, so I thought you had a question. Sorry.
No.
No worries. Anyone have a question? Feel free to pick my brain. That's why I'm here. Okay. All right. Put it in the chat room if you want as well, folks.
Hi, Keith.
Hey.
Slow with the mute button. Just looking at your website around what services you provide. Obviously, workshops like this, but the consulting bit.
Yep.
Can you talk us a bit more through that?
If you want to talk to me offline, Mike, because I'd like to do the webinar tonight, I'm happy to talk to you separately, basically. If you want to send me an email or give me a call, and we can do that, basically.
No worries.
Excellent. Thank you. Talk about a need for funding, the commercial potential for investment, folks, into your football club. You could be the best resource in the world. They just don't know it yet. You could be the best community conduit. They just don't know it yet. And there's fantastic football clubs I've worked with across New South Wales, basically, who really understand their value in the community, their value to the sporting code, their value as a business. And they've basically appointed certain board or committee members in that regard, their volunteer management, their fundraising, their donations policy. They have a plan for everything. They've planned Rego Day to the nth degree. That's the kind of football club you can be. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. And if you are that club, well done. Congratulations. Pat yourself on the back and continue to do that. But that's what they want to invest into. They want to invest into an organization that knows all about business, that knows all about profit, because they understand that you probably take care of on the pitch exceedingly well, but they want to know what you're doing off the pitch. And that's where you need to think as a football club now, if you're looking for money in any grant from government or the private sector at the end of the day. WeFM and VFM principles, value for money. It's government's favorite phrase. Next to shovel ready is their other favorite phrase. So again, value for money. Make sure they expect you now to give them return on investment. All right. So if I invest a government grant dollar into you, you need to turn it into a 3-to-1 ratio of return nearly. WeFM is more private sector, but I think government embrace it to a degree as well, which is what's in it for me. Where can I leverage my brand, my logo, my corporate social responsibility? But we know the government like to put up a plaque, they like to come out and cut the ribbon, basically have an open day to make the announcement, the big check moment. Okay, you got to give them that opportunity, obviously. So talk about the market opportunity to leverage that news story, the management capability. They're now asking for the caliber of people running the show in your football club. What kind of people are on your committee? What's their skill set, their experience, their qualifications to manage money? Okay. And the local, state or national benefits, the knock-on effect, basically, that if we invest in this football club, what's it going to do for the game of football in your area? What's it going to do basically as a learning point for other football clubs from what you're doing, what initiative or what infrastructure you're putting in, and how cost effective that is? Government are interested in obviously how you're going to save them money, but also basically how you're going to spend the money appropriately in terms of the grant as well. So know the program rules, know your grant program rules, plan your application, be creative but honest. Don't say you can do your project in 12 months when it's going to take you 18 months to do it. Research successful grants. They publish who they gave the money to last year, for how much, and for what. Look at what other football clubs have been applying for, what they've been successful in, what's been liked as a program or initiative that they've funded at the end of the day, and even pick up the phone and talk to that football club. Okay. Research successful grants, as I said, provide information required, no more, no less. People need to think to put everything into an application, including the kitchen sink. You don't. Less is more, as I said. That's your mandate. Answer the question you're asked, not what you think you're asked, and no superfluous information. It's either needed or required, or it's not. If it's superfluous, it's going to detract from the application. I'm going to look for what's actually allowed to be put in as attachments, not what you think it is. I'm not going to click on websites or hyperlinks, right? Not allowed. I'm not going to necessarily allow infographics. You can't, there's no formatting to allow that at the end of the day. So you're going to be restricted to a certain degree anyway. So you got to be very deliberate about what you're including in terms of your content in your application. So grants is about telling a story, painting a picture with words. Get away from last minute applications. Don't be there at 4:55 p.m. pressing send on the computer and hoping for the best, basically with 5 minutes to go. Yes, Mike?
Sorry, guys, I've got to drop off. But thank you very much so far, and I'll get in touch with you.
No worries, Mike. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Be proactive rather than reactive, folks. Have a grants calendar. People can only help you if they know you exist. Profile, profile, profile. Did they even know you exist as a football club in the LGA, in a local government area? No, more than likely they will. They've heard of you. They've seen you. They even may have they played there themselves, or the members of their family have played there. But make sure you reiterate that back. People can only help you if they know you exist. Profile, profile, profile. And certain football clubs that I've worked with across this great country, basically their last Facebook post has been August 2009. Now you need to be current, topical, and relevant for me to invest into you. And that's just the truth. And cultivating that relationship, again, we're back to that or. You need to have a relationship with clubs, New South Wales, and particularly your local leagues club, all right? Or particularly your local clubs, New South Wales venue at the end of the day, okay? RSL, whatever the case may be. Work with other connectors in the community. That's what I want to see. They're back to that, what they call community capacity building, collaboration, whether it be other football clubs, as I said, your association, Football New South Wales, other sporting codes, schools, community groups, not-for-profits, government agencies, whatever the case may be. Internal and external resourcing. This comes down to what Mike was asking about grants writing. Do you need to outsource it to someone, or do you have the capabilities and be realistic about that in your own football club to do it? And local, state, and federal current affairs that are out there, what government are saying, what they're awarding money for, what they want you to be part of, which means a bit of research, as I said, in terms of government policy and objectives. Okay. And going back to internal and external resourcing, obviously there's a number of facets and people that can help you. Obviously, Daniel's there is a great resource of Football New South Wales and the organisation as a whole. Your association's there to help you. Other clubs, obviously, as well. Your local government authority may have a grants officer as well. There's a number of resources out there that are free, best price in town, to help you at the end of the day. But obviously do it in a timely and mannerly fashion, basically, rather than last minute, because everyone's going to be looking for their help with a week to go in the application process. This is your first template. Because in some way, shape, or form, you're getting asked these questions. And in fact, the most predominant question you're going to get asked in a grant application is why? Why do you want the money? Why you? Why here? Why now? But your first template is who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? When do you do it? Why do you do it? And how much money do you want for it? Now, if you're going to struggle to answer those questions, you're going to struggle with a grant application. So that's the first template you need to go through for yourself as a football club, which comes back to having a master plan, comes back to having a mind map, comes back to doing a strategy session as a football club with your committee and board and going, right, this is where we are in 2022. Where are we going? What's the next 3 to 5 years? What do we need money for? How are we going to get the money for that? Once we plan that, basically, you need to do a strategic planning session for yourself. And I end up doing a lot of football clubs. Yeah.
Can I really interrupt you and say that when you talk about doing a strategic planning, are you saying that you go to the table with your grant application, say, this is what we're looking for down the track? So currently I'm talking about what we're trying to do is we've got a building halfway out of the ground, but going forward out of the ground, half built, but going forward, yes, to talk about returfing the park and upgrading the lights. So do you talk about going forward, or you're talking about going to the table for your initial want? So use that word.
Yeah, it's a staged approach. You talk about the want now, definitely, Steve, but obviously you got to give them the bigger picture, right? And what it leads to, the greater translatory effect. If you build it now at stage 1 into stage 2 into stage 3 and stage 4, they want to see, because that's real value for money in terms of investment, that I'm starting off here, but my money is going to grow and perpetuately grow basically into, and it's going to be part of a bigger infrastructure, part of a bigger club in some way, shape, or form. So you quantify and qualify the need now, but you also show it's part of a wider remit
going forward.
Cool. Yeah. I see we've comments. Christy's had to leave. Okay, no problem at all. Excellent. Anyone else, any questions or comments? Making sense? Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Excellent. So talk about an investment rather than a gift. That's what it is at the end of the day. That's what they want to see. It's not a handout. It's an investment. Avoid dwelling on problems, focus on opportunities. So problems and solutions. Grants are given for solutions, not problems. Yes, you highlight the problem, 20 to 30% in value. The rest of it, basically 70 to 80%, is about quantifying the solution. And that's the investment they're going to give you for, is the solution, not the problem. And a realistic assessment of the urgency. I know you needed the money yesterday, but you might get the money for up to a couple of months, if even 6 months, basically, in government funding. So you can't do it retrospectively. You can't have started on the project. You have to wait until you get the green light, you sign the contract, you're shovel ready, obviously, at the end of the day. Then when they say go, you go, and only at that point. So Project Rationale has come up as a standalone now in a lot of government grants and private sector grants to clearly state the why, as I said before, the why the project's needed, the justification of that at the end of the day. That's what they want to see, an explanation as to that. Why you, why here, why now, why this location, why this piece of infrastructure in the club grants category 3. And in order to do this, you need to do all of the following that I've highlighted there in the slide. Break it down and then build it right up again. Quantify and qualify. That's what I want to see. Okay. Make a statement, back it up. So unless you're evidence-based, you're going to be flying in a speculative fashion, not where you want to be as a football club. So it has to fit in with local planning. Obviously, what Football New South Wales envisaged for the area and for growth of football, your local association, the council, if you're on council facilities, all that consultation needs to be there and evidence in not only in letters of support, but in your argument as well, and show that compatibility in your argument as well. Show indicatively that, you know, we know what needs to happen. This is part of a wide remit of understanding of what needs to happen. And our idea is not just our idea, everyone else supports our idea because it's a good idea. And we've shown that in our support for it. And in project timing is what they want to understand as well. So this is time management 101. They really want to see that you understand the goalpost can move continually with funding. The goalpost can move because of acts of God, COVID, where it's going to stop building, start building, all these different initiatives, basically, that you have a flexibility of approach, you have a plan B, you have contingencies built in, all of that. That's what they want to see from you as an applicant, let alone as a process. So your project may need to include some of these outcomes in the evaluation reporting, so you need to build in some additional time. You be very cognizant, certainly with infrastructure projects, right? Rare they're going to come in on time. All right. So budget, it's evidence that you can manage money, as I said earlier on, basically. So the first thing to do is carefully price all the costs that relate to the project. Check where requesting for money is in line with the guidelines stipulate. Quintessentially, I just don't want to see any artificial budget inflation, no padding out, cost what it costs, exact figures, right? And aligns to what they will pay for as well in terms of eligibility. Just because it'll allow you to apply up to 50% doesn't mean you have to apply for 50%, because generally speaking, the lower amount of money you fund or ask for, excuse me, the better chance your project of attracting funding. Why? Because they want to share as much money from their pool of resources, and I'm talking the clubs here, across a wide demographic and wide geographic. So you'll see when you go to the club's award ceremony, when you've been listed amongst all the other successful applicants who are there and the successful recipients of the funding, you'll see the diversity in a number of funding entities they've given money to at the end of the day. So they want a wide demographic and wide geographic leverage point for their funding. It's not all for you. And again, look at cost offset in terms of what you're asking for. Does everything have to be brand new? Does everything, can it be shared resources, shared facilities? Be more savvy with the ask in terms of asking for the money, what you're asking for in the budget. And also incidentals. Does everything need to be on that as a budgetary line item, or can you absorb some of the cost yourself, basically, as a club? And if it's going to be a multi-year, factor in inflation and factor in salary. If they basically is dedicated, as I said, for certain project officers, project roles, they will allow wage components to that, but indicate and quantify and qualify to them that basically, again, there's no blowouts here at all. I just don't want to see that under any circumstances. So it has to be related to what the project costs, not to the general operations of the club. It has to be there, basically. Even minimal costs, can you absorb them? As I said, as might perceive these as artificial budget inflation and padding out, as I said, and becomes a wish list again, rather than a quantifiable investment opportunity for the funding body. Don't start retrospective, as I said again, to reiterate, don't start in the project, don't have done stage one already, because they don't want to commit to that. They want to be there when they turn the first sod of turf. They want to be there at the start of the project. They want to be there. They don't want to do the funding retrospectively at all. Okay, so don't start anything until we've been awarded the funding, signed the agreement, and they give you dispensation to start. Methodology now has become a standalone section as well. All right. And again, it's about breaking it down. It shows a clear pathway linking individual stages of your project. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. A does not lead to E. No shortcuts in the project. Federal government call it program logic or total quality management, which means solid foundations. And you do stage one based on solid foundations, and then stage two, a graduated approach. That's what they want to see. Okay, so like Steve was talking about, and what I was advocating back to him basically is like, here's my present need of what I want now, but this is part of a larger master plan of what we're trying to do as a football club on site with multiple facilities on site. And I usually give out 4 or 5 different project plans to my clients, and I wanted to share one with you tonight basically. So a project title is less than 10 words, ideally 5 words, project summary. And again, I've limited these down to word counts, right? In terms of grant application word counts. Project summary in 100 words, you're going to talk about the purpose of the project, the scope of the project, the people involved in delivering the project, the financials, the timescales, and the risks. Because your full project description is going to be 1,000 words encompassing all of that. And this is what, going back to that first template of the 5 W's, you got to get in the habit of building project plans and doing projects and having a plan and a budget before you go do an ask. The 7 key principles, the 7 commandments, as we colloquially call them, Commonwealth Government, and they're applicable to state government, they're applicable to local government, they're applicable to private sector as well. And you can see how much they love the words effective and efficient in Canberra. But again, I would stick to these 7 in terms of your grants narrative, in terms of what you're saying and what you're actually trying to get across to them, basically that you're trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve, and you understand how they want to do it and sell it back to them through terminology and usage of their own wordage as well, but obviously changing it, not copying and pasting it and blatantly using their own words. But these are the 7 pillars. These are what they want to see in terms of your application, embedded in your application. That quality assurance is embedded in your application as well, these 7 pillars. My top 10 tips: make it about your reader, your prospective client, because that's what they are. They're going to be a new client of yours, which are going to invest into you. Answer the question, try not to waffle, make it clear what's in it for them, the return on investment. Be direct, don't talk around the subject, talk at the subject when you're writing it. Avoid sweeping statements, no blue sky statements, no waffle, no wordology. Give great examples, mini case studies, 60 words or less. Remember, looks and kill. As I said earlier on, if it looks like a sloppy application, it's written by a sloppy football club. Jog their memory if you've been in receipt of funding from them in the past and shown how you delivered on time and on budget with that. And sure, like an old journalistic adage, count your words and make your words count, make it word perfect.